I spent 2 years and $325,000 building my father a house where he could walk to the water by himself. The first time my brother walked through the front door, he brought a folder labeled Sunrise Assisted Living and asked Dad where he kept the deed. My name is Anna Keller. I am 39 years old. I am not telling you this story because I want revenge. I am telling it because for 18 months I watched someone I love try to take everything my parents built. And I said almost nothing while I learned how to stop him without destroying my father in the process. My mother died 8 years ago, but she left me a warning inside an old clock, and that warning is the only reason my dad still eats breakfast on his own dock every morning. My parents bought their first piece of land in northern Wisconsin when I was 7. It was not on a lake, it was a scrubby 2-acre lot behind a dairy farm with a trailer that leaked every spring. My mother, Ruth, would sit at the tiny kitchen table and draw houses on graph paper while my dad, Thomas, fixed engines in the yard. She always drew the same house. Wide hallways, no steps, big windows facing water, a kitchen where you could sit to chop vegetables. She called it her someday house. Dad worked 34 years as a machinist at the paper mill in Rhinelander. Mom taught third grade. They saved everything. Not for vacations, not for cars, for someday. When I was 29, Dad had his first stroke. It was mild, but it took his balance. The second one came 3 years later, right after Mom got sick, pancreatic, fast. She was gone in 11 months. She was 63. After the funeral, Dad moved into my small house in Wausau because he could not do stairs anymore. He hated it. He hated needing help to shower. He hated me watching him like a child. One night I found him at 2 in the morning trying to make coffee standing up, holding the counter, shaking. He looked at me and said, "Annie, your mother drew that house for a reason." I pulled out her old graph paper from a box in the attic. The edges were yellow. I took it to an architect in Minocqua. I told him I wanted 0 steps, 36-inch doorways, a curbless shower with a bench, counters 2 inches lower than standard, lever handles, and a smooth poured concrete path from the back door all the way to a dock with a rail he could hold. He asked my budget. I told him I had sold Mom's little teacher's retirement annuity, cashed out my own 401k, and taken a construction loan against my house, 325,000. He did not blink. It took 2 years. I was on site 4 days a week after my nursing shifts. Dad would come up in his truck and sit in a lawn chair and watch. The builders thought he was the inspector. He would point at a threshold and say, "Ruth said no lips." They learned to listen. We finished it in June, 2 weeks before what would have been their 40th anniversary. It sits on 8 acres on Lake Thompson, not a mansion. Cedar and glass, 1-story deep eaves. The kitchen faces east so Dad gets morning sun on his face while he eats. The bedroom faces the water so the last thing he sees at night is the lake. The most important thing I moved in was not furniture. It was Mom's clock. It is a 1923 Seth Thomas grandfather clock, dark walnut with a moon dial. Mom found it at an estate sale when I was in high school for $40, completely seized. She spent 3 winters taking it apart on our dining table, cleaning every gear with cotton swabs, oiling it, teaching herself from library books. She refinished the case by hand. When it finally ticked again, she cried. Dad used to wind it every Sunday night. After she died, it sat silent in my garage for 5 years because I could not stand to hear it. I put it in the corner of the living room at the lake house, right where Mom had drawn it on her graph paper. Dad wound it the first night. It has not stopped since. For 6 months, something amazing happened. Dad started walking to the dock alone, at first with a cane, then without. He built a little fish cleaning station. He started making his own oatmeal again because he could reach everything. He invited his old mill buddies for coffee. He laughed. His doctor at the VA said his blood pressure was the best it had been in a decade. He told me, "Your mother would be mad you spent that money, and then she would love this kitchen." That is when my brother came back. Ethan is 3 years older than me. He left Wisconsin when he was 22 after a fight with Dad about money he borrowed and never paid back. He moved to Phoenix, sold solar, then cars, then something with crypto. He came home for Mom's funeral, stayed 2 days, asked Dad for $10,000 for an investment, and left when Dad said no. We did not hear from him for 5 years except a Christmas text. He showed up on a Tuesday in October. No call, just a rental SUV in the driveway. He hugged Dad like he had never left. He hugged me and said, "Annie, you did good." He walked through the house touching counters, opening closets. He kept saying, "Wow, and this must have cost a fortune." He stayed for dinner. Dad made walleye. Ethan asked a lot of questions. How was Dad managing his pills? Was he still driving at night? Had he fallen recently? Did he get lonely out here in winter? It sounded like concern. I wanted it to be concern. Before he left that night, he left a folder on the kitchen island. I opened it after he drove to his hotel. Inside were 3 glossy brochures for sunrise assisted living in Green Bay and a printed checklist titled Signs It Might Be Time. He had circled things in pen: forgets medication, lives alone in remote area, recent health decline. Dad had not forgotten his medication once since moving in. I fill his pill box every Sunday. He had not had a health decline, he had improved. I did not say anything. I put the folder in a drawer. Ethan came back 3 days later with groceries, then again the next weekend. Then he started coming every weekend. He started calling Dad daily. He added himself to Dad's pharmacy text alerts. He told me it was so I could have a break. I am a nurse. I do not need a break from my own father. In November, he brought a woman named Karen from Senior Transition Services. She walked through the house with a tablet, measuring doorways, smiling too much. She said, "This is a beautiful home, Thomas, but so much upkeep for one person." Dad said, "My daughter built it so I would not have to leave." Ethan laughed and said, "Dad's got a great sense of humor." After they left, I asked Dad if he wanted that. He looked at the clock, the one Mom restored, and said, "I wind that clock every week because your mother asked me to keep time moving in this family. I am not done moving yet." I started documenting that night, not because I am paranoid, because I am a nurse and we chart everything. I bought a simple notebook and wrote dates, times, what was said. November 12, Ethan asks about Dad's long-term care insurance. November 19, Ethan asks me how the house is titled. December 3, Ethan offers to help simplify Dad's finances. At Christmas, he gave Dad a gift. It was a leather portfolio embossed with Dad's initials. Inside was a power of attorney form, already filled out with Ethan's name as agent, just needing a notary. Dad opened it, stared, then closed it. He said thank you and set it aside. Later, I found it in the pantry behind the cereal. I still said nothing to Ethan. I smiled at dinner. I asked about Phoenix. I watched. In January, Dad slipped on ice getting the mail at the end of the driveway. He did not fall. He caught himself on the mailbox, but he bruised his hip. I took him to urgent care. He was fine. I told Ethan on the phone because Dad asked me to. Within 6 hours, Ethan had called me 4 times, had called Dad's doctor's office pretending to be his medical proxy, and had emailed me a link to a personal injury attorney. That night, Dad and I sat by the fire. The clock ticked. He said, "Your brother is scared of being left out, Annie. Your mother always said he counts money when he is scared." I asked him what Mom meant. He got up slowly, walked to the clock, opened the lower door where the pendulum swings, and ran his hand along the inside back panel. He said, "She hid things in here when you kids were little. Birthday money, notes. She said if anything ever happened to her, I should remember the clock keeps more than time." He did not open anything, he just closed the door. In February, Ethan brought up selling, not directly. He said the market was hot, like houses were going for a premium. Dad could sell this place, buy a nice condo in town near medical care, and have a couple 100,000 left over to enjoy. Dad said, "I am enjoying." Ethan said, "Think about it." In March, I came home from a night shift and found a man in a navy blazer walking around the outside of the house with a camera and a laser measure. He said he was from Lakeshore Appraisals. He said Ethan Keller had ordered a market valuation. I told him to leave. He left. I called Ethan. He said, "Relax, Annie, I just wanted to know what we're working with for planning purposes. No big deal." That was the day I stopped just writing in the notebook. I started pulling records. I am Dad's healthcare proxy legally since Mom died. I called the insurance company. Ethan had requested a full copy of Dad's long-term care policy 3 times in the last 90 days. I called the county register of deeds. No changes to the deed. The house is in my name. I built it. I hold the mortgage. Dad has a life estate I gave him so he can never be forced out. Ethan did not know that. I sat at the kitchen table that night after Dad went to bed. The clock chimed 9. I thought about my mother spending 3 winters cleaning those gears with a cotton swab, because she believed broken things could work again if you were patient. I thought about my father learning to walk to his dock again at 72. I thought about my brother measuring my father's house for money while he slept. I opened my laptop and created a folder. I named it after Mom, Ruth. Inside I put photos of the brochures, screenshots of the pharmacy alerts Ethan added himself to, the email from the appraiser, the call logs from the insurance company. I did not know what I would do with it yet. I just knew my mother did not restore that clock so it could watch our family be sold piece by piece. For the next year, I would say almost nothing. I would let Ethan talk. I would let him bring more folders, more friends, more plans. And every Sunday night, I would watch my dad wind that clock, and I would remember what he told me that night in January. The clock keeps more than time. After the appraiser left that day in March, I did not confront Ethan. I made coffee, I charted, and I waited. Nurses learn early that you do not treat a symptom until you understand the disease. I am going to tell you what the next 18 months looked like, because people think betrayal happens in one big fight. It does not. It happens in small appointments you are not invited to. Ethan started coming every Thursday through Sunday. He called it his Wisconsin weekends. He would bring groceries Dad did not eat. He would fix things that were not broken. He would take photos of the dock at sunset and post them with captions like "cherishing time with Dad." He told everyone in Phoenix he had moved home to care for his father. In April, he asked for a copy of Dad's VA benefit summary. He said he wanted to make sure Dad was getting the aid and attendance stipend he deserved. I emailed it to him because Dad told me to. 2 weeks later, I got a call from the VA office in Milwaukee asking why there were duplicate requests for Dad's direct deposit change forms. I had not requested anything. In May, he brought the Sunrise Assisted Living folder back, but this time it had a financial worksheet inside. He sat at the kitchen table with Dad and a calculator and said, "Dad, if we sold the lake house for, let's be conservative, 600,000, you could buy into Sunrise. Have 24-hour care and still have 300,000 left to invest. Annie wouldn't have to worry about the mortgage." Dad looked at me over his coffee. I was standing at the sink. I said nothing. Dad said, "Annie doesn't have a mortgage on this house, Ethan. She paid cash for the build. I have a life estate. Your mother designed it that way." Ethan laughed too loud and said, right, I forgot." He had not forgotten, he had never known. I put the house in my name on purpose with an attorney in Wausau after Mom died. Dad has the legal right to live here until he dies, and no one can sell it out from under him, not even me. Mom's graph paper had a note in the margin in her handwriting, "Make sure Tom can't be moved." I listened. That night I added to the Ruth folder, screenshot of the VA call log, photo of the worksheet. In June, Dad turned 73. I made his favorite lemon cake. Ethan gave him a GPS medical alert watch and activated it in his own name, with his own phone as the primary contact. He did not ask me when I found out. I called the company and added myself as secondary. The customer service rep said, "Oh, your brother already called 3 times to test it." I asked why. She said he wanted to make sure the fall detection was sensitive enough. Dad wore it once. It buzzed when he cast his fishing rod. He took it off and put it in the drawer with the power of attorney. The clock kept ticking. Every Sunday at 7, Dad would unlock the glass door, take the brass key from the little ceramic dish Mom made, wind the weights, and close it. It took 3 minutes. He never rushed. Sometimes Ethan would watch and say, "That thing is worth money, you know, antique like that, restored, probably 15 grand. Dad would say, "Your mother restored it because she loved the sound, not the price." In July, Ethan started asking about Mom's things, specifically her jewelry box, her china, the quilts she made. He said we should inventory for estate planning. Dad told him everything of Mom's was already given away, which was mostly true. I have her wedding ring on a chain in my jewelry box. Ethan asked me if I had the appraisals. I said no. In August, I was working a night shift at the hospital when my phone buzzed. It was an alert from Dad's My Chart, which I am listed on. Someone had accessed his after-visit summary from his cardiology appointment. It was not me. I checked the access log the next morning. The login was from an IP address in Phoenix using Ethan's email, which Dad had given him in case of emergency the previous Christmas. I drove to the lake house after my shift, exhausted, and found Ethan in Dad's office, at Dad's desk, going through the file cabinet. He said he was looking for the property tax bill so he could pay it online for Dad. "The taxes are paid through my escrow. I have never missed a payment." I said, "Ethan, what are you doing?" He closed the drawer and said, "Helping, you work nights, Annie. Someone has to stay on top of this stuff." I did not yell. I went to the kitchen and made Dad lunch. While Ethan was in the bathroom, I opened the file cabinet. The files were out of order. The folder labeled Insurance LTC was missing. The folder labeled Deed Lake House had been opened, the staple pulled. I added photos to the Ruth folder that night. I also called my friend Mara, who is a paralegal in Green Bay. I asked her, hypothetically, what it means when a sibling repeatedly requests a parent's insurance records and tries to access medical portals. She said it means they are building a competency case. That word sat in my chest for weeks. Competency. In September, Ethan took Dad to lunch in town without me. Dad came home with a glossy folder from a law office, Lindholm Elder Law. Inside was a brochure about Medicaid crisis planning and asset protection trusts. There was a business card stapled inside with an appointment time written on the back. October 4, 2 p.m., Ethan plus Thomas Keller. Dad said Ethan told him it was a free seminar on veterans' benefits. I called Lindholm Elder Law the next day. I did not lie. I said I am Thomas Keller's daughter and healthcare proxy, and I wanted to confirm his appointment. The receptionist confirmed Ethan had booked a consultation for estate planning and possible transfer of real property. I asked if my father had requested it. She paused and said, "Your brother said your father was having memory issues and needed help managing the lake property." My father was at that moment outside, splitting kindling, remembering exactly where Mom had planted lilies 8 years earlier. I canceled the appointment. I told the receptionist my father had not consented and to note the file. I added the call to the Ruth folder. That fall, Dad's health actually got better. He walked the full loop to the mailbox and back without his cane. He started teaching himself to play harmonica again. He would sit on the dock at dusk and play badly, and the loons would answer. Ethan would film him and say to the camera, "Look how frail he's getting." I have those videos saved. Frail is not the word I would use. In November, Ethan missed Thanksgiving. He said he had a business emergency in Phoenix. Dad and I had a quiet dinner. After pie, Dad wound the clock and said, "Your mother always said November was when people show their true intentions because the holidays make them hurry." I asked what he meant. He just patted the clock. 2 days after Thanksgiving, I got a letter from Dad's long-term care insurance company addressed to Dad, copied to Ethan. It was a summary of benefits and a claim initiation packet. Someone had started a claim. I called the company. The representative told me the request came through their online portal, signed electronically by Thomas Keller, from an email address I did not recognize. It was ethankeller72 at Gmail. I told them it was fraud. They froze the claim. I drove to Phoenix is not an option when you work full-time and care for your dad, so I did the next best thing. I hired a local private investigator in Phoenix for 1 day of work. His name is Lewis. I gave him Ethan's name and address for $300. He told me Ethan had 2 judgments against him from 2022 for unpaid business loans, totaling $87,000, and that his condo was in pre-foreclosure. He also sent me a photo of Ethan having lunch on a patio with a woman in a blazer, identified as Karen from Senior Transition Services, the same woman who had measured our doorways a year earlier. I put it all in the Ruth folder. It was now 18 gigabytes of screenshots, PDFs, photos, call logs. I still had not opened the clock. In December, Ethan came for Christmas with gifts and apologies. He cried at dinner and told Dad he was sorry he had been distant, that he wanted to make things right, that he was worried about being a good son. Dad hugged him. I watched my father's face. He wanted to believe his son. On Christmas morning, Ethan gave Dad a new wool kit from an office supply store. He said, "Dad, we should update this just in case. I can be executor, take the burden off Annie." Dad thanked him and put it under the tree. Later, I found it in the recycling unopened. That night after Ethan went to bed in the guest room, Dad and I sat by the fire. The clock chimed 10. Dad said, "Annie, do you remember when your mother finished this clock?" I said yes. He said she worked on it for 3 winters. The third winter, she got sick the first time before the cancer. She thought it was the flu that wouldn't quit. She told me if anything ever happened to her, I should look behind the moon dial. She said, "Tom, I left you instructions." He smiled. I thought she meant how to wind it. I felt my heart stop and start again. I asked if he had ever looked. He said no, he was afraid to break it. Ethan stayed through New Year's. On January 2nd, I came home from work early and heard him on the phone in the guest room. The door was cracked, he said. "Yeah, once we get him into Sunrise, we list in spring. Lakefront is hot. Even after the mortgage, there's at least 250 equity, maybe 3. That clears my stuff and leaves enough to set up a trust for Dad." He paused. "No, Annie won't fight. She's a nurse, she'll be relieved." I did not walk in. I went to my room, closed the door, opened my laptop, and backed up the Ruth folder to 3 pla. The next morning, Ethan left for Phoenix. He kissed Dad on the forehead and told him he loved him. Dad waved from the porch. That afternoon, Dad asked me to help him wind the clock because his shoulder was sore. I unlocked the glass, took the key, wound the left weight, then the right, then the center. When I closed the door, I noticed something I had never seen in 30 years of that clock living in our house. On the inside of the lower door, scratched very faintly into the wood, were initials, RK plus TK. And under them, in my mother's small, neat print, the words, "Lift the seat." I looked at Dad. He was asleep in his chair, mouth open, hands folded. The fire popped. The clock ticked. I knelt down, opened the lower door again, and ran my hand along the back panel where the pendulum hangs. There is a false back I had never noticed. My mother, who could take apart a clock and put it back together blindfolded, had built a hiding place. Behind the pendulum, taped to the wood with yellowing masking tape, was a small brass key, not the winding key, smaller, like for a diary or a box. and tucked beside it a folded envelope soft with age with my name on it in her handwriting. Anna. I did not open it yet. I sat on the floor with that key in my palm and listened to my father breathe and the clock keep time, and I understood for the first time why I had waited 18 months. I was not waiting for Ethan to stop. I was waiting for my mother to tell me what to do next. I did not open the envelope right away. I sat on the rug with my father's breathing and the clocks ticking filling the room, and I held that small brass key like it might burn me. My mother had been gone 8 years. She had not seen the lake house. She had not met Ethan's Karen. She had not watched me spend $325,000 I did not really have. And yet she had left me something with my name on it, taped inside a clock she finished when I was in high school. I waited until Dad was truly asleep, until his chin dropped to his chest and his hands relaxed. I carried the envelope and the key to the kitchen, turned on the light over the sink, and washed my hands the way I do before a sterile procedure. Old habit. The envelope was not sealed. The flap was tucked in. Inside was a single sheet of her heavy cream writing paper, the kind she used for thank you notes, and a smaller folded note paperclip to it. The first page was in her perfect teacher's cursive, "My dearest Anna. If you are reading this, I am gone and your father has finally let you look inside the clock. Good, he is stubborn about that clock. I told him it keeps more than time and he thought I was being poetic. I am writing this on a Tuesday in March. You are 16 and practicing your driving permit in the grocery parking lot. Ethan is 19 and just asked your father for money for the third time T. I am watching the way money makes him nervous, and the way your father wants to fix it by giving in. I restored this clock because I needed something that would outlast me. Something with a heartbeat that was not mine. I built a hiding place behind the moon dial because I knew someday one of you would need proof that love can be practical. Lift the seat, use the key. There is a box. Inside is what you need to keep your father in a house with no steps. Do not feel guilty for protecting him. Do not let Ethan make you feel cruel for saying no. Saying no is sometimes the kindest thing a daughter can do. Wind the clock every Sunday. Let it remind you that I am still keeping time for you. All my love, Mom. I read it 3 times. My hands were shaking so hard the paper rattled. The smaller note paperclip to it was shorter, in the same handwriting but shakier, like she wrote it later. Anna, the life estate deed is in the box. Tom knows where the original is, but this is a copy with my signature as witness, dated 2007. Also a flash drive. I asked Mr. Harlow at the library to put a video on it for me. Show it to Ethan when he comes. Show it to your father when he forgets he is strong. Love, M. I was 22. Ethan was 25. Mom was 55 and healthy. She had seen this coming 15 years before I built the lake house. I went back to the living room. Dad was still asleep. I knelt in front of the clock and really looked at it for the first time since I was a child. The moon dial is at the top of the face, a little painted moon that waxes and wanes. Mom had always told us never to touch the dial. Lift the seat, she wrote. The seat is the little wooden ledge inside the lower door where the pendulum hangs, the piece you lift to access the weights. I had lifted it 1,000 times to wind it. I had never lifted it all the way up and out. I took the brass key, slid it into a tiny keyhole I had never noticed on the underside of that seat, hidden in the shadow. It turned with a soft click. The entire wooden seat lifted. Out like a tray. Underneath, set into the base of the clock, was a shallow metal box about the size of a paperback, painted black to blend in. It was cold to the touch. Inside the box were 4 things. 1. A manila envelope with Life Estate THOMPSON Lake typed on it. Inside was a copy of the deed for the land we eventually built on, dated 2007, showing my parents bought the 8 acres for $42,000 cash. There was a handwritten addendum, signed by both my parents and notarized, granting a life estate to the surviving spouse. And then to me as remainderman with specific language: this property shall not be sold, transferred, or encumbered for the purpose of funding assisted living or long-term care without the express written consent of Anna Keller. My mother's signature was a witness. She had made me the protector before I even owned a whose. 2. A small SanDisk flash drive with a piece of masking tape that said Play 4 ETHAN in Mom's writing. 3. A stack of photographs held together with a rubber band. Photos of Mom and Dad on the land in 2008, standing in snow, holding up her graph paper house plans. Photos of Mom at the kitchen table drawing the zero-step shower. On the back of one in her writing, for Tom so he can get to the water. 4. A letter addressed to Ethan in a sealed envelope with his name on it in Mom's hand. I sat on the floor and cried for the first time since we broke ground on the house. Not because I was sad, because I was so angry at myself for thinking I was alone in this for 18 months. My mother had built me a weapon out of love and a clock. I put everything back except the flash drive and Mom's letter to me. I locked the box, replaced the seat, closed the clock. Dad woke up when the clock chimed 11. He looked at me on the floor and said, "You found it." I said yes, he said. "She told me she left you instructions. I was supposed to give you the key when you turned 30. I forgot where I put it." He smiled. She was always smarter than me. I helped him to bed. Then I went to my room, plugged the flash drive into my laptop and prayed it still worked after 15 years and a clock. It did. The video was short, 2 minutes and 11 seconds, shot on what looked like an old library webcam. My mother is sitting at our old kitchen table in the trailer, younger than I remember her, hair pulled back, wearing her green cardigan. She looks directly into the camera. She says, "Hi Ethan, hi Anna. If you're watching this, I am not there anymore and you are probably fighting about the house or the money. I want to be clear. Your father and I bought the lake land because we wanted a place where Tom could fish when his knees got bad. We designed that house together on graph paper so he would never have to leave it. Anna, I know you will build it. You have my hands. Ethan, I love you, but you have always been afraid of not having enough. That fear will make you take from your father if you are not careful. Please do not. Let your sister protect him. She is better at it than you are. And if you are watching this because you tried to sell the house, know that I saw you coming and I still love you, but the answer is no." Then she looks off camera and says, "Tom, stop laughing. I am being serious." Dad's laugh is heard behind the camera. The video ends. I closed the laptop and sobbed into my pillow so Dad would not hear. The next morning, I called Mara, the paralegal. I sent her scans of everything from the box. She called me back in an hour and said, "Anna, your mother basically built a fortress. The life estate is ironclad. Ethan cannot force a sale. He cannot force your dad into a facility. He cannot even get a reverse mortgage without your signature." The video is not legally binding, but it is devastating in front of a judge if he ever tries for guardianship. I asked her what I should do. She said, "You have two choices. You can send him a cease and desist and hope he stops, or you can do what your mom did, invite him to dinner and let the truth speak for itself." I knew which one Mom would choose. I spent the next 3 weeks preparing the way I prepared for the house build. I printed timelines. I printed the call logs from the insurance company showing Ethan's 3 fraudulent requests. I printed the email from Lindholm Elder Law confirming he booked a consultation about transferring real property. I printed the photo Lewis sent of Ethan with Karen and the judgment records. I printed the screenshot of Ethan's phone call where he said, "Once we get him into Sunrise." I put everything in a binder with tabs, the way nurses make care plans. I also made a copy of Mom's video on a new flash drive, and I put her letter to Ethan, still sealed, in the front pocket. I did not tell Dad the details. I told him I wanted to have a family dinner, just the 3 of us at the lake house on Mom's birthday, which was coming up in 2 weeks. He loved that idea, he said. "Your mother would like that. She always liked feeding Ethan." I invited Ethan by text. I said, "Dad wants you home for Mom's birthday dinner March 14, 6 p.m., just us." "Please come," he replied in 3 minutes. "Wouldn't miss it, love you both." For the next 14 days, I watched my father live his life. He walked to the dock every morning with his coffee. He wound the clock every Sunday. He played harmonica badly. He told me stories about Mom I had never heard. He was not a man who needed assisted living. He was a man who needed to be left alone in the house his wife designed for him. The night before the dinner, I could not sleep. I went downstairs at 2 a.m. The clock ticked. I opened the lower door, took out the seat, looked at the black box. I did not need to open it. I knew what was in it. I whispered, "Thank you," to my mother, to the gears, to the wood she sanded by hand. I closed the clock, wound it, and went back to bed. Tomorrow I would lay every piece of evidence on the table my mother drew on graph paper 15 years before it existed, in the house I built with my own hands. And I would let my brother see that the woman he thought was just a third-grade teacher had been protecting her family long after she was gone. March 14th was my mother's 68th birthday. She would have hated a fuss, so I made her favorite meal, pot roast with carrots, the way she taught me when I was 12. I set the table in the dining area that looks straight out at the lake, the table my father built from reclaimed barn wood during the house build. I put 3 plates down. I put the binder I had made in the middle, closed. I put the small flash drive next to Dad's water glass. I put Mom's sealed letter to Ethan on his bread plate. Dad wore his good flannel. He wound the clock at 6 o'clock on the dot like always. It chimed, he smiled at the sound. Ethan arrived at 6:07 with flowers for the table and a bottle of wine. He hugged Dad, hugged me, said the house smelled amazing. He looked relaxed. He thought he was coming for a birthday memory dinner. We ate. We talked about Mom. Dad told the story about how she once tried to fix the school copier with a butter knife. Ethan laughed, I laughed. For 20 minutes it felt like a normal family. When the plates were cleared, I did not bring dessert. I opened the binder. I said, Ethan, I need to show you something. Because I love you, and because I am tired of watching you try to take our father's life apart while you pretend you are helping. He froze with his wine glass halfway to his mouth. Dad just folded his hands. I turned the binder around and slid it to him. Tab 1, the insurance requests. You requested Dad's long-term care benefits 3 times using his name. The company flagged it as fraud. Tab 2, the Lindholm elder law appointment. You told them Dad had memory issues, he does not. Tab 3, the appraiser. You ordered a valuation on a house you do not own. Tab 4, the photo of him with Karen in Phoenix and the judgment records. You are $87,000 in debt and your condo is in foreclosure. Tab 5, the transcript from his phone call. Once we get him into Sunrise, we list in spring. He did not touch the pages. His face went red then white. He said, Annie, you are twisting this. I am trying to plan. I said, no, you are trying to sell. Dad reached over and put his hand on my arm. He said, son, let her finish. I picked up the flash drive. I said, Mom left this for you. 15 years ago, I plugged it into the small TV we keep in the living room for Dad's baseball games. I pressed play. My mother's face filled the screen, younger in her green cardigan in our old kitchen. Ethan made a small sound when he saw her. She said her piece, exactly what she recorded. Ethan, I love you, but you have always been afraid of not having enough. That fear will make you take from your father if you are not careful. Please do not let your sister protect him. She is better at it than you are. And if you are watching this because you tried to sell the house, know that I saw you coming and I still love you, but the answer is no. The video ended. The clock ticked. No one spoke for a full minute. Ethan stared at the screen. Then he looked down at the sealed envelope on his plate with his name in Mom's handwriting. His hands shook when he picked it up. He opened it. Inside was a single sheet of her cream paper. My dearest Ethan, I know you think I was hard on you about money. I was not hard on you. I was scared for you. You have a good heart, but you panic, and panic makes you grab for things that are not yours. If you are reading this, you have probably tried to move your father out of his home. Please stop. That house on the lake was drawn for your father to die in peace, looking at water, not in a hallway that smells like disinfectant. I have left Anna the legal tools to stop you because she will do it kindly. I am leaving you something else. I am leaving you my blessing to start over without taking from your dad. Sell your condo. Come home and work with your hands for a while. Your father will teach you to fish again if you ask. I love you more than you know. Please do not make your sister have to be the bad guy. She already built the house. Let her keep it standing. Mom, Ethan read it twice. Then he put his face in his hands and cried, not performative crying. The kind that comes from deep in the chest. Dad reached across the table and put his big machinist hand on Ethan's shoulder. He did not say anything. He just held on. After a while, Ethan looked up at me. He said, Annie, I am so sorry. I am drowning. I thought if I could just get the equity, I could fix everything and then I would take care of Dad, I swear. I said, I know you thought that, but Dad does not need taking care of. He needs to be left alone to live. Ethan nodded. He pushed the binder back to me. He said, what do you want me to do? I said, first, you call the insurance company tomorrow and withdraw everything. Second, you never contact Karen or any realtor about this house again. Third, you come back next month not to help, just to fish with Dad, no folders. He said yes to all 3. Dad stood up slowly from the table. He is 73, he has had 2 strokes, but he stood straight. He said, I am going to the dock. It was dark, it was March, it was cold. Ethan started to say, Dad, it's icy, and then stopped himself. I grabbed Dad's coat and his hat. I walked with him to the back door, opened it, and watched him step onto the smooth concrete path I had poured for him 2 years earlier. He did not use his cane. He held the rail, one hand over the other, and walked all the way to the end of the dock by himself. He stood there looking at the black water and the stars. Ethan and I watched from the doorway. Ethan whispered, he's okay, isn't he? I said, he's better than okay, he's home. Ethan left the next morning. He hugged Dad a long time. He hugged me and said thank you. He has called every Sunday since, just to talk, not to plan. He started a job at a hardware store in Phoenix last month. He told Dad he is saving money. Dad still winds the clock every Sunday at 7. I still fill his pill box. We still have coffee on the dock in the mornings when it's warm enough. The binder lives in the office now, not because I need it, but because it reminds me that my mother taught me how to protect people without screaming. She restored a broken clock because she believed broken things could work again if you were patient. She was right. My brother is not fixed, but he is working. My father is not young, but he is free. And I am not angry anymore. I built a house so my father could walk to the water. My mother built a plan so I would know how to keep him there. That is our justice. It was not loud, it was not cruel. It was just love with paperwork. Thank you for listening to my story. If you felt this in your heart, please like, comment, and share this video, and subscribe to Justice Served Tales for more real-life stories about family, loyalty, and protecting the people we love. I am Anna, and I will see you on the next one.